Ross, why don't we start by telling us why procrastination is so important to you and how you got into procrastination?
Well, like most other people, I have goals and missions and things that I want to achieve, uh, and at various times in my life, I've had starts and stops, and on a personal and professional level, it's very important to me. I also obviously have a full caseload of psychotherapy patients, and over the years, I noticed that this was a common complaint: I can't get the thing done that I said I wanted to get done, that I really, really do want to get done. And especially, I've seen it with creatives, with creative people. I've seen it with corporate people. Creatives in particular get what they call writer's block or artist's block. And they don't feel the muse and they don't feel like working. And I've got people who supervise hundreds of people, but can't get their projects finished. So I started studying it and realizing that there is in fact quite a few techniques that can help people break out of it. And so I thought, I'm the guy to do that. So here I am.
Okay. And I see that you mentioned creative types, you mentioned corporate types, and you mentioned tech or engineering types. And that's...
I'm sorry, you said which types?
Tech types, engineering
Tech
types.
I got a lot of entrepreneurial types who want the help.
Okay, I understand that there's a kind of interplay between procrastination and mental health, which goes two ways. Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. Well, there's similar mechanisms going on with procrastination and mental health. In both situations, we often have an underpinning psychological problem, which is that the human brain tends to seek safety and survival and minimal risk. And that is what's behind often anxiety. The brain also tends to have a very demanding tendency. We tend to have preferences, desires, wishes, wants, but we also at the same time have demands, commands, ought to, have to, must, should, got to, need to, what we call awfulitis or awfulizing. It's awful, it's terrible, it's catastrophic if I don't get what I am seeking right now, or if I don't behave or perform at the level that I believe I should be performing at, or that life is not meeting me halfway. These are all the same mechanisms that happen behind depression, anxiety, phobias, and of course, procrastination.
So you're saying that procrastination is not independent of emotional challenges. The procrastination is a manifestation of emotional challenges sometimes.
It can be both. I think you can come to procrastination through depression or anxiety, or you can procrastinate, and that can cause depression and anxiety.
Okay.
So I think you can come into it, you can back into it both ways.
Okay, but if you address the procrastination, then will the procrastination help alleviate the depression or anxiety?
I believe if it's not a chemical imbalance, and if it is in fact a psychological thinking and behaving and emotions imbalance, then we can in fact change that. Now, a lot of the reason people become sad or anxious is they have past experiences with procrastination, and they believe that the past predicts the future, that the past will mandate that they fail again. If they failed to complete tasks, get through school, finish that novel, do that work project that doesn't have an absolute immediate deadline. They feel that since they have failed previously, they will fail again. That leads them into depression, or they become anxious because they're fearful that they're going to procrastinate again. Or they become self-blaming and self-rating and self-shaming because they have procrastinated a number of times so far. So yes, I do believe it is, we can solve some of the anxieties, a great deal of depression, a great deal of self-rating and shaming and self-loathing by working on procrastination. So we're taking one entrance in. There are multiple entrances in, but one entrance into these mental health issues is helping them with procrastination.
Okay, I'll in our previous conversations, we've talked about the procrastination paradox, where it's hard for procrastinators to address their procrastination because they procrastinate.
Exactly.
So what tools do you have available, or how will your group help somebody procrastinate make that jump?
Okay.
Take the leap.
Well, the first thing we like to do on a group level is to identify our values. And, companies, corporations do this often so that their huge teams of employees all stay on the same page. It's like, if we don't have a constitution, the country doesn't understand what our shared values are. If our company doesn't have a shared mission and values, we're all going to be moving in different directions. And the same thing happens with an individual. If you don't know your values, you're chasing various goals and either not completing them because there's no value behind it for you, or you're chasing a goal that doesn't really meet your internal values. It's someone else's value that you adopted or you swallow whole, but you never truly digested and made part of you. It could be your parents or society has a value that you don't really truly share. And then you end up 40, 50 years old, having that midlife crisis going, who am I and why am I here? And this is not my beautiful house and this is not my beautiful wife and who am I? So we like to start this by underpinning what you want, finding out what you want and how that dovetails with your values. Once we get your values, then we can start to look at your goals. We can have goals tied to values. We can also go in the other way and find out what your goals are and see if there's a value connected to it. But one way is to start values, break values into goals, and then start a game plan, a strategy, and calendaring and setting up those steps. And then when we have the steps and we actually know those steps are infused with your values, we know that you really truly want this thing and you're not procrastinating because deep down inside, this is not what you want. Now we know you want it. We know you have a plan. We know you've broken it down into steps. Now, if you stall, now we can pretty much safely say this is a psychological stumbling block. There's something going on in thinking and behaving that we need to interrupt.
Okay,
so that's how we get to that part. Is first we just chunk everything down into manageable steps, and we notice that you're not doing those steps because for some people procrastination is just not knowing that first part. What are my values? What are the goals I can tie to those values? How do I break those down into manageable chunks? And how do I calendar and get that set up? That's just one aspect. For some people, that's all they need. For others, they've got all that part, but now they're still stalled. They're still distracted. They're still downshifting their priorities. And by downshifting priorities, I mean they, instead of tackling that task that's going to mean so much to the company, they start answering small emails. So they feel busy. They feel like they're still working. They're not procrastinating in their mind because they're doing something, but it's really small. And the payoff and the payout is very small. And there's still this looming big project, which is less fun. And they're not working on it.
Okay, so you're saying distraction is a type of procrastination, and it can hide procrastination because you feel busy, you look busy, you are busy, right, but you're not hitting your goals.
Most procrastinators aren't lazy. They are doing something. They're just not doing the important thing. So they're downshifting priorities, they're distracting, they're doing something else, but it's not the thing that needs to be done.
Okay. I'm intrigued now.
Okay.
So one of what we talked about before, one of the items we talked about before was accountability, and it sounds like we need to break down into manageable tasks and calendar, because then we can be accountable to ourselves and each other.
Yes.
Could you explain how that works in the group and why?
Absolutely. Yes. Accountability is huge. And again, everyone who comes to the group is going to get more out of one aspect than the other, because for some people it's, this is a large umbrella, procrastination. There's a lot of different kinds of procrastination, and there's a lot of different motivations that come under it. But one of the aspects is that some people just need that group support. They just need other people who are going to check in with them and go, hey, how's that going with that diet? Hey, how many pages have you put out this week on that novel? Hey, did you get to work on that big project, which, nobody's screaming at you about at work, but if it doesn't get done, you're going to be accountable sooner or later. Hey, did you get to work on those taxes that you said you knew you wanted to do, but you hate doing? So just that group dynamic of, I got to come in on Monday and tell these guys and gals what I did or didn't do. Okay, that can be the nudge that some people need. In addition, in the group, we do set up weekly goals. We say, okay, what are you going to do this week? What are you going to get done this week? And we try to make sure these are chunks that can be done, that the person isn't chunking too large. Another aspect to accountability is penalties and rewards. Sometimes life isn't giving us the penalty and reward suddenly. It's going to accumulate the penalty. It's going to be 40 years down the road, the penalty. It's going to be when you can't afford to buy that property, in 20 years. It's going to be when the IRS contacts you in 3 or 4 years. It's going to be when that novel isn't there anymore. It can even be in your relationships where you didn't put in the time and the effort, and someone suddenly comes to you and says, I'm out. So we have to sometimes create artificial penalties and rewards. We have to what they call in the sobriety programs, create a higher bottom. Everyone has a different bottom, and some people's bottom has to be jail and institutions and death. And other people, it's my wife left me, and for other people, it's I got a warning at work. So we want to create a high bottom for people so they don't get those low bottoms. The high bottom for us would be creating artificial rewards and penalties. One kind of reward you can create for yourself is something you're already giving yourself, maybe too frequently. It could be a dessert if the goal is not dieting. It could be a little mini vacation. It could be a hot bath at the end of the day. It's just something that kind of puts a little cherry on top and says, good job, acknowledged, you did this thing. So sometimes it's taking something you're already rewarding yourself with, removing it, and saying you don't get to scroll on Facebook and Instagram until you mow the lawn. Okay, so it's sometimes delaying the reward that you're already giving yourself. Sometimes we have to create a new reward. For the penalties, we can get very creative. The penalty has to be a little bit worse than the result of the procrastination. So let's say,
give an example of a penalty.
Yeah, a penalty could be I've got to do 100 push-ups. It's just got to be slightly more distasteful, slightly more unpleasant than the act of doing the behavior that you wish you could be doing. So I don't want to sit there and stare at the blank pages on my screen while I'm trying to write my screenplay, but I really don't want to do 100 push-ups. So I'm going to start typing. I'm going to start moving my fingers. I don't want to, mop the floor on Saturday that my partner would love me to do, but I really don't want to pick up cigarette butts off the street for an hour, which is the penalty we've created for people. It's doing a good deed for society. Now, some people, I'm not advocating necessarily, but some people take money and they make that the penalty. And so they would perhaps take a $50 or $100 bill and burn it. I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying some people do it. And for some people, that's a strong motivator to completely waste money. Not give it to somebody who you can use it, because that's still, you can go, oh, well, I'm a good guy and I did something good and I can procrastinate. But it's complete waste. Nobody benefits. Another creative penalty is where you say, I'm going to send this money to my least favorite political group. my least favorite charity, the people I want to have it the least. So if you're a Democrat, you might send it to a Republican organization, or a Republican, you might send it to a Democratic organization. If you're from a particular ethnicity, you might send it to some organization that is not pro who you are. Of course, we don't want that to happen. So we want to work hard to overcome the procrastination just to avoid the penalty.
Can you share with us a story about one of your clients with no identified details, but something that will help us get a feel for how this actually plays out?
Sure, sure. I have clients who have trouble with dating. They procrastinate. They don't want to, they don't want to get on the apps or go out and meet people. And we will set up a goal together where they have to ask out 3 people a week, or have 3 conversations in a week with strangers. And if they don't ask 3 people out a week, they have to put that money in an envelope, give it to a trusted friend, put a stamp on it, put the actual address of the dreaded group on it, and send it. And I've had clients who've had that envelope, given it to someone, and they don't have to send it because they get out there, they hustle, and they have those conversations.
Okay, that's very encouraging. I know I wanted to talk more about the role of self-esteem in procrastination.
Yes.
And let's talk about this, and then I'd like to set another time. We'll talk some more about, because we have so many questions. But can you talk a bit about self-esteem and procrastination?
Sure. We have a unique perspective on self-esteem. A lot of this comes from the work of Albert Ellis, who created the work, probably in 90 books, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. It's the original cognitive behavioral therapy, and it teaches us that many of our emotions are not primary, they're secondary, and they come from the way we think. And one of the emotions that comes from the way we think is shame and self-rating and self-loathing. And it comes because we believe there's a rating system to humans, and that somehow our rate or our credit or our value rises and falls with what we do or what we say. And we contend, no, you're born with your credit rating, which is the same as everyone else's. And I don't mean financially, but just your esteem, your sense of self, your birthright is that you have a right to be here. You are not a fluke of the universe. The universe is not laughing behind your back. You have a right to be here, and you have a valid space on this planet. And the idea of self-esteem, as it's been put out by a lot of folks, is that it's something you can raise and lower. And I would say instead, no, you can change your self-evaluations and recognize that you already have value. You're not adding value. You can't subtract value. Even if you do things you're not proud of, even if you've done things that you're ashamed of or that you feel guilty about, the behavior needs to change. But yourself is not stained or ruined or invalidated. So we kind of ask people to sort of avoid the concept of self-esteem and to push on reducing self-rating.
So a person who doesn't have that sense of self-value, who's giving themselves a low rating, why does that make them more likely to procrastinate? And why do you need to get them away from that in order to help them get past procrastination?
Well, usually when you're giving yourself a really low self-value, it's not, for most people, it's not motivating, it's depressing. It makes people many people go catatonic. I don't want to do anything. I want to lay in bed, or I want to drink this alcohol, or I want to binge on, reality TV because I'm useless. Look at what I've done. Look at how bad I am. So it's actually self-defeating. And so we want to encourage people, first of all, to understand that procrastination is a natural part of human behavior. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and to stop self-downing. That's the first thing we want to do, is get them to start changing their internal dialogue, change their language. and start talking to themselves in a way that's a little more, yes, I did something I didn't like. I'm going to try like hell to change that behavior. And in the meantime, I'm going to accept that I'm a flawed human being like everybody else. And I'm going to use that as my baseline. I'm going to launch from that point is I'm a regular human being. That means I do make errors.
Okay, I'm glad to know that even Ross can accept that he makes errors, because I've been
Yeah.
talking to Ross frequently, and I'm overall very impressed. So I think in one of our next conversations, maybe we'll get more into self-esteem. We'll get more into how the groups help the participants identify obstacles, actually navigate around or through or over those obstacles. We want to talk about changing thoughts and procrastination, and we have a lot to talk about. But I think this was a really good start, Ross, and I'm glad we talked today.
Great, great.
Okay. In the meantime, if you want to know more, at getfocus.org, get-focus.org, there's lots of information. There's a way to sign up for the support groups, and please feel free to reach out and get started, because the most important thing in stopping procrastination is taking that first step.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.